My name is Lydia Monroe, and I was 13 years old when I realized that adults could lie straight to your face and still call it love. From the outside, our family looked intact. That was the word people liked to use. We lived in a 2-story colonial in Maplewood, Connecticut, with white shutters and a maple tree out front that dropped leaves every fall like clockwork. My parents still shared the same roof, the same kitchen, the same dining table. To neighbors, teachers, even distant relatives, we were just another quiet, respectable family. But the truth was messier. My parents had stopped loving each other years before I could even spell the word divorce. They slept in separate rooms, spoke politely, functioned like coworkers stuck on the same long-term project. And that project was me. They told themselves, and me, that staying together was the mature thing to do, that it was for my stability, for my childhood, for my future. I believed them. I wanted to. So when my mom sat me down one Tuesday evening and told me she was seeing someone, the room felt like it tilted. His name was Brandon Cole. She said it casually, like she was announcing a new coworker or a Pilates class. She smiled, watched my reaction carefully, as if she were bracing for impact. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt replaced. Brandon came into our lives slowly at first. Dinner here, a weekend visit there. But from the very first moment I met him, something about him made my skin crawl. He watched me too closely. Not like a caring adult, not like someone trying to connect. It was more like he was measuring me, deciding how much space I took up, how much trouble I might be. At 13, I didn't have the words for it yet. I just knew I didn't trust him. He had 2 kids, a daughter, Chloe, 15, sharp-eyed, constantly rolling her eyes, and a son, Tyler, 18, tall, smug, already acting like the world owed him something. From day one, it was clear. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as an obstacle. And Brandon, he never corrected them. My dad noticed. Of course he did. Every time Brandon came over, my dad grew quieter, more rigid, like someone had walked into his house and started moving furniture without asking. The tension between them was immediate and unmistakable. Brandon tried to assert himself. Little comments, casual authority. Well, in my house, I think kids should. I believe discipline matters. My dad didn't argue loudly. He didn't need to. He just reminded my mom, again and again, of the promise they'd made. They would live together under the same roof until I turned 18. No exceptions. Brandon hated that. You could see it in the way his jaw tightened whenever my dad spoke, in the way he smiled too hard, like his teeth were clenched behind it. He wanted to play house with my mom, and my dad was the wall he kept slamming into. Dinner became unbearable. We'd sit around the long mahogany table my dad inherited from his parents. Mom would cook pot roast or chicken casserole, trying to pretend everything was normal. Brandon and his kids on one side, me and my dad on the other. Nobody really ate. Every meal felt like a silent standoff. I didn't make it easy, I'll admit that. Whenever my parents dated in the past, I'd done everything I could to scare people away. Loud music, attitude, slamming doors. I wanted my parents back together, even if that version of them didn't really exist anymore. But Brandon was different. None of my usual tricks worked. I could be loud. He ignored me. I could be rude. He smiled through it. I could push boundaries. He pushed back harder. And the worst part, my mom adored him. She talked about how understanding he was, how patient, how he made her feel seen again. She said he was exactly what she needed after years of emotional limbo. What about what I needed? Things crossed a line the night Brandon suggested moving in. He said it like it was already decided, like the house was just a formality. My dad shut it down immediately. The argument that followed wasn't loud, but it was brutal. Every word carried years of resentment, grief, and fear. I listened from the stairs, my stomach twisted into knots. That was when I realized something important. This wasn't just about love. It was about territory, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I didn't know then how much I would lose, or how much power I would eventually gain. But that was the night the war truly began. If I had known what was coming, I would have paid closer attention to my dad in those final months. Back then, I thought his tiredness was just another symptom of stress. Long hours at work, sleepless nights, the quiet weight of living in a house that no longer felt like his. He smiled at me the same way he always had, soft, a little sad, but steady. He still asked about my homework, still reminded me to lock the door, still made pancakes on Sunday mornings when his strength allowed it. But something was wrong. It started with hospital visits to Hartford Hospital. At first they were quick, tests, monitoring, just to be safe, the doctors said. My mom went with him most of the time. Brandon tagged along once or twice, standing awkwardly in the corner like he didn't quite belong there. Because he didn't. Then the visits got longer. My dad grew thinner, quieter. He spent more time sitting in his old recliner, staring at nothing, Yankees games playing softly in the background. Brandon began showing up more often, bringing groceries, offering help, slipping into routines that weren't his to claim. And then, suddenly, he was there all the time. When my dad was admitted for what would be the last time, my mom said it made sense for Brandon to move in temporarily, just until things stabilized. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. Grief does that to you. It dulls your instincts, makes you too tired to fight. My dad died on a Thursday morning. A heart attack. Quick. Final. No dramatic goodbyes. No last speeches. Just a phone call that shattered everything. I remember sitting on my bed afterwards, staring at the wall, thinking that if I stayed perfectly still, maybe time would rewind. Maybe he'd come home. Maybe I'd hear his keys at the door. But all I heard were footsteps downstairs. Brandon's footsteps. The house changed after that. Not all at once. Slowly. Insidiously. My dad's jackets disappeared from the coat rack. His shoes were moved to the basement. His favorite coffee mug, blue, chipped at the handle, vanished from the cabinet. Brandon didn't ask. He just replaced. Less than a month after the funeral, my mom announced they were getting married. She told me over dinner, her voice overly gentle, like she was afraid I might break. A small ceremony. Close friends. Riverside Country Club. I felt sick. It wasn't just grief, it was disbelief. How could she move on so fast? How could she bring this man deeper into our lives when I was still sleeping in my dad's old t-shirt because it smelled like him? But I didn't stop it. I didn't know how. The wedding happened quietly. No drama, no joy either, at least not for me. I stood beside my mom, numb, watching Brandon slide into a role that didn't belong to him. And then came the call. My dad's lawyer, Mr. Henderson from Henderson and Associates, asked us to come in. I remember sitting in that office, the leather chairs too stiff, the air smelling like old books and aftershave. Brandon sat beside my mom, one arm draped possessively over her chair. He looked calm, confident. That confidence didn't last. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and explained that my dad had left a will, a very detailed one. Everything went to me. The house, the investments, the vacation property in the Hamptons, accounts I didn't even know existed. My mom received a small cash amount, nothing more. The silence afterward was deafening. Brandon's face didn't change much, but his eyes did. Something dark flickered there. Calculation, anger, fear. Overnight, I became a problem. Brandon started acting differently around me, politer on the surface, sharper underneath. Comments about responsibility, about earning your place, about how money could ruin kids if they weren't guided properly. I saw it for what it was. Control. Breakfast turned colder. Brandon and his kids spoke as if I wasn't there, discussing house plans, future vacations, renovations. My mom tried to include me, but it felt forced, like she was afraid to disrupt the fragile peace. One morning, Brandon casually mentioned redoing the living room. Our living room, he said. I spoke up before I could stop myself. Shouldn't everyone get a say? He looked at me like I'd overstepped, like I was a child interrupting adult business. That look told me everything. This house wasn't mine to him. It was his, waiting to be claimed. I started spending less time at home. More nights at my best friend Natalie's place. Her family didn't ask questions. They didn't push. They just let me breathe. But the tension followed me. And then, one night, curiosity got the better of me. Brandon had left his MacBook Pro open on the coffee table. I shouldn't have looked. I did anyway. Emails. Real estate listings. Greenwich properties priced far beyond anything my mom could afford. Subject lines about selling current residents. Messages about liquid assets. My stomach dropped. He was planning to sell the house. My house. The next morning, I confronted him. The look on his face, panic, quickly masked, told me I'd hit something dangerous. He tried to explain it away. Options, hypotheticals. My mom hadn't known. The argument that followed cracked something open between them. She started watching him more closely, asking questions. And Brandon? He started watching me. That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't just about blending families. It was about money. And I was standing in the way of everything he wanted. After the emails, nothing in the house felt neutral anymore. Every sound had an edge to it. Every glance carried meaning. Brandon didn't bring up selling the house again, not directly, but I could feel it in the way he moved through the rooms, measuring walls, lingering in doorways, acting like a man already imagining something new in the old space, something without me in it. My mom tried to restore normalcy. Family dinners, movie nights, forced smiles that cracked under pressure. She asked more questions now, especially when Brandon talked about finances or future planning. But she still didn't fully see him the way I did, or maybe she didn't want to. Brandon tightened his grip in quieter ways. He made rules, lots of them. A chore chart appeared on the whiteboard stuck to our stainless steel refrigerator, color-coded and precise, like a military schedule. Dishes, trash, vacuuming, laundry. Everything had a time and a consequence. Structure builds character, he said one morning, tapping the board with a marker. It sounded reasonable, fair even, but the enforcement was anything but. If Chloe or Tyler missed something, Brandon brushed it off. They've got a lot going on. If I missed anything, even because of homework or staying late at school, he pounced. You're not pulling your weight. This house runs on contribution. You can't expect special treatment. Special treatment. The words burned. Coming home after school became unbearable. Most days, Brandon was already there, sprawled in my dad's old recliner like it belonged to him, phone pressed to his ear, talking business. My dad's Yankees memorabilia, once proudly displayed, had been boxed up and moved to the basement. Brandon's magazines took their place. It felt like erasure. I stopped using common spaces. Ate in my room, showered late, stayed invisible whenever I could. Brandon seemed irritated by that too, like my absence robbed him of something. Control, maybe? The breaking point came late one night. Everyone was asleep. The house was quiet in that eerie, hollow way that only comes when grief and tension settle into the walls. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were too loud, too tangled. I walked downstairs without thinking, just pacing, just breathing. That's when I saw it. Brandon's laptop, open, glowing on the coffee table. I froze. I told myself to walk away. I didn't. The screen showed an email chain, more detailed this time. Property listings, timelines, discussions about maximizing returns and leveraging inherited assets. Inherited assets. My hands shook as I scrolled. He wasn't just planning to sell the house. He was counting on the money from it, banking on it, talking like it was already his. I felt sick. The next morning, I brought it up again at breakfast. My mom was mid-bite, French toast halfway to her mouth, when I asked, calmly, about the emails. Brandon nearly choked. He laughed it off at first, said I misunderstood, said kids shouldn't snoop. My mom didn't laugh. She asked him why he'd been contacting a real estate agent without telling her. The argument that followed was loud, uncontained, words flying like glass. Brandon accused me of stirring trouble, of trying to pit my mom against him. My mom demanded answers, real ones. For the first time, Brandon didn't control the room. Something shifted that day. My mom didn't kick him out, but she watched him now, questioned him, checked bank statements, asked about his job at the insurance company, details he'd always been vague about. Brandon noticed. He grew sharper with me, colder, no more fake kindness. And then, a few days later, I heard something that changed everything. I was home alone doing homework when Brandon came back early. He didn't know I was there. I heard his voice from the living room, low, strained, angry. No, that's not what we agreed on. I need more time. I said I'd have it. I crept to the top of the stairs. He was pacing, phone clenched in his hand, sweat on his brow. I need another week, Tony. I'm good for it. You know I am. The call ended abruptly. Brandon slammed his phone onto the table. I understood then. This wasn't about planning. It was about desperation. That night, I told my mom what I'd heard. I watched the color drain from her face. Fear replaced denial. She confronted him the next evening. I stayed in my room, heart pounding, listening to raised voices echo through the house. Brandon denied everything at first, then minimized it, then blamed stress. My mom didn't back down. She told him she wouldn't tolerate lies, that she wouldn't put me at risk. That word, risk, hung heavy. For days after, Brandon walked on thin ice. Polite, careful, too careful. The tension was unbearable. Then, one evening, he snapped. Came home late, clothes wrinkled, hair undone, eyes wild. My mom questioned him again. He exploded. Said he was done being treated like a criminal. Said he didn't need this. Said he was leaving. He packed a bag, threw it into his BMW, drove off without looking back. The house was silent afterward. I felt relief, guilt, fear, all tangled together. But deep down, I knew one thing. He wasn't gone for good. And when he came back, it wouldn't be for love. It would be for what he thought he deserved. For a few days after Brandon left, the house felt strangely hollow. Not peaceful, not safe. Just suspended. Like we were all holding our breath, waiting to see whether the storm had truly passed or was simply circling back. My mom barely slept. She moved through the house on autopilot, checking her phone every few minutes, jumping at every sound. I pretended not to notice, but I did. I noticed everything. I also noticed how quiet it was without Brandon's voice filling every room. For the first time since my dad died, I felt like I could breathe, but the silence didn't last. Brandon came back less than a week later. He showed up on a Saturday afternoon with flowers, an apology already rehearsed, and a version of himself that felt carefully constructed. Calm, soft-spoken, rational. He told my mom he just needed time to clear his head, that the phone call I overheard had been work stress taken out of context, that everything was resolved now. My mom wanted to believe him. Grief makes you desperate for stability, for anything that looks like normal. She let him back in. I didn't say a word, not because I forgave him, but because I knew better. If I pushed too hard, I'd become the problem again, the difficult child, the obstacle to her happiness. So I watched. Brandon was different now, controlled, smiling, almost too careful. He avoided direct conflict with me, but the tension simmered just beneath the surface. Every interaction felt like a test. Every word was measured. I stayed out late, made excuses, slept over at Natalie's whenever I could, and then came the night everything finally exploded. My mom was working late at her marketing firm. Brandon's kids were out with friends. It was just the two of us in the house. I hated that. I was getting ready to leave, grabbing my jacket, texting Natalie, when Brandon noticed the sink. My dishes. You're not leaving those, he said sharply. I'll do them when I get back, I replied, keeping my voice steady. That's not how this works. I tried to explain, calmly, rationally, That in our house, everyone did their own dishes. That I wasn't dumping work on anyone. He didn't care. His voice rose. Accusations poured out. Lazy, entitled, disrespectful. Something in me snapped. I yelled back. I cursed. I told him he wasn't my father and never would be. That's when he smiled. Not a nice smile. A knowing one. "Oh, I see," he said. "So this whole time you've just been playing nice. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" I shot back. "For your mom to leave you everything," he said coldly. "You think I don't see it? You stick around because you want the money. You want the house. You want everything your dad left behind." The words hit harder than any insult he'd ever thrown at me, because they weren't random. They were rehearsed. That's when it clicked. My mom must have lied to him. She must have told him that my dad left her everything. It explained everything. His bitterness, his urgency, his obsession with control. He thought I was competition, a threat to what he believed was already his. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Brandon looked confused, angry. "You're an idiot," I said, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. My dad didn't leave anything to Mom. He left everything to me. The house, the Hamptons place, all of it. Mom got almost nothing. His face went white. At first, he didn't believe me, accused me of lying, manipulating. Then he saw my expression. The laughter stopped. The truth settled in, and I watched his world collapse in real time. I left the house without another word. I didn't go back that night. I stayed at Natalie's, my phone buzzing nonstop. When I finally answered, it was my mom, furious, panicked, yelling. She accused me of sabotaging her marriage, of humiliating Brandon, of throwing gasoline on a fire she was trying to put out. I snapped back. I told her she had no right to lie, that she let him treat me like garbage because she was jealous, because she resented the fact that my dad left me everything and her nothing. She cried, explained, said her business had been struggling, said my dad never helped her, said she didn't want Brandon to know how little she'd been left. I didn't buy it. I told her the truth, that if she'd been honest with me from the beginning, I might have shared. But she chose Brandon over me, over and over again. I told her I wasn't coming home. I blocked her number. The next morning, I woke up to an apology text. She said she loved me, that she wanted to talk, but the damage was done because Brandon now knew the truth. And a man like Brandon doesn't stay when the money disappears. I didn't go home for 3 days. Natalie's parents didn't ask questions. They didn't push. They just let me exist, curled up on their guest bed, eating toast at midnight, staring at my phone without answering it. When I finally unblocked my mom's number, there were dozens of messages, apologies, explanations, guilt, but none of them mentioned Brandon. That told me everything. My grandparents flew in from Phoenix the following week. They had always been my dad's quiet backup plan, the people he trusted when things went sideways. When they arrived, my mom looked smaller somehow, older, like the last few years had finally caught up with her. That was when she told us the truth. After I told Brandon about the inheritance, he exploded. Not immediately. At first, he tried to charm his way out of it, claiming he'd misunderstood, that money didn't matter, that family was what counted. But the damage was done. He felt betrayed. Not because my mom had lied to him, but because the future he thought he'd secured had vanished. When my mom told him I wouldn't come back while he was still living there, he lost control, accused her of choosing me over him, of hiding things, of wasting his time. He filed for divorce the next day. They hadn't been married long enough for him to claim much of anything. Their finances were mostly separate. The house was never his, the money was never his, and now he knew it never would be. My mom cried when she told us, not just because of the divorce, but because she finally saw what she'd allowed, how she'd ignored the signs, how she'd let a man tear into her daughter just to avoid being alone. She apologized, really apologized. Not excuses, not deflection, just accountability. She told me she'd failed me when I needed her most, that she'd chosen comfort over protection, that she'd been wrong. I listened. I didn't forgive her immediately, but I didn't shut the door either. Brandon moved out quietly. No goodbye, no confrontation, just boxes gone one morning. like he'd never been there at all. The house felt different after that, lighter. My mom started therapy, focused on her business, slowly rebuilt herself. She even paid for my college, insisting it was the least she could do. And me, I learned something powerful. The gift I gave Brandon wasn't revenge. It was truth. And truth is devastating to people who survive on lies. The moment he realized the money was never his, everything he'd built his confidence on collapsed. He lost my mom, lost the life he thought he was stepping into, lost the control he believed he deserved, all because he finally saw reality. Sometimes the most destructive thing you can give someone is exactly what they asked for, the truth.